Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello.
to Ubuntu on Air again. I am Reese.
I'm
This is
Monica.
Monica.
Yep.
And today we have another wonderful little community office hours. We're going to bring on a couple of guests in a few minutes to talk about some interesting things. But first, like we've done a few times before, I think we're working out a format now, Monica. I think we like this. We're going
I
to do a
think
little
so
bit of
too.
an introduction to what's been going on in the community. So, Monica, why don't you go first?
Let's see. Well, last week was right here. We introduced the community wallpaper contest, and if you could maybe post the link to the submission form on Discourse, because holy cow, one weekend we have so many submissions, including photography and people who've made artwork. And it's really great to see. I have noticed that so far there has been no macaroni art yet, and so clearly we need more macaroni art submissions, if only to prove Joey from OMG Ubuntu wrong or right, that we can have macaroni art.
And a macaroni art desktop wallpaper would be something quite special. I think that's good.
It really would be. So yeah, so I mean, people's you still have till August 20th to submit those, but definitely go see kind of some of the things people have posted. That's been really great to see. And so that's kind of been one of the big things. And also we've been having some really good talks on the membership front with especially with people from the community council, about maybe trying to make that whole process kind of a little bit more friendly for kind of non-developers there. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. So and speaking of on the membership front, today is it's a bit of a personal story, but when we had the membership meetup with Diogo and Dan, Big Pod, he's also one of the Ubuntu Mate team. He mentioned that he had signed up for his date, and actually that meeting is happening today. So yeah, so I know, which is
amazing.
Exciting. So going to go and virtually cheer him on, but that's really cool. So yeah, so a bit of a personal story but it's also community news, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Community news, friends of the show. That's what it is.
Oh my god, totally friends of the show. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And other things that have been going on, there's been more conversation around the state of the sort of wider Ubuntu documentation ecosystem, which has been going on a little bit. It's getting a bit huge, as we expected, because it's quite a large problem that everyone's aware of. It's something that I think we're going to start carving some time out for to address properly and to start getting things in place. So hopefully we'll be able to contribute more to that discussion soon. And our friends over at UbuCon Asia have extended the deadline for CFPs. So if anyone is wanting to present or talk a little bit at UbuCon Asia, you've still got time to do it. They said they didn't quite get enough people submitting yet, so fill their roster. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, and it just seems like they would be a really great, like, especially if you're kind of new and you've been like, well, maybe I want to submit a talk. Oh, especially if you're in this time zone. So this would be, because that's you don't have to be up stupid early or stupid late, and it would just be a great thing to do. And there's just such energetic and excited people about Ubuntu and open source, that if you haven't submitted a talk and you've got something in mind, just put a proposal together and just put it out there. And trust me, speaking at these kind of events this was previous life, but it's kind of, once you start presenting, I think it's kind of hard to stop. So
So I think this would be a really great one to start with, or
I think so
go
too.
back to, because it's they say obviously it's UbuCon Asia, so there's lots of there might be some language things, but they were saying when we had them on the stream a couple of weeks ago that everything can be in English and everyone has a decent grasp of English, and so anyone can give the presentations, and it'll be super cool.
Yeah, so definitely put in your submissions.
Okay, now since this is the earlier one of our community office hours, it looks like we've got some people in the chat, but not as many as before, but that's okay, because we've got some guests to bring on today.
Yay!
Let me bring them onto the stream and we can let them introduce themselves. Introducing Sahini and Pedro. Woo!
Hello!
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. So welcome to the stream, guys. Thank you for joining us today. We were going to be talking about Juju things, but before we get into that, why don't we learn a little bit about you guys? So, Sahini, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about you.
Ooh, not much about me, but let's see. I've been at Canonical for now almost 2 years, and I think before that, the big theme of what I do is essentially establishing equity in communities. So I started out doing that with healthcare, and then I moved into improving access to education. And then I was like, why stop there? Let's do it with all of the things in tech. And so over the past 2 years, I've been doing crazy stuff like bringing Linux more profoundly into the automotive industry to really propel innovation and things that are going on there. And then to all those poor, unfortunate souls that are stuck with Windows, I've been bringing you Linux through the Windows subsystem for Linux. And a couple of other things like that. Now I'm working on a thing called Juju and Charms, and we can chat more about that later. But it's pretty cool stuff.
Awesome, thank you very much, Pedro.
Yeah, I've been working at Canonical for about 7 or 8 months now. But I work as a product lead. I engage with several engineering teams and on all the aspects of the project lifecycle, from the very beginning of the architecture to interacting with the community and getting some feedback. But I've been using and loving open source since I first put my hands on a keyboard, and since I can remember. And for the first time, I got a computer without an operational system, and I didn't have money to buy Windows. That's the first time that interacted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't stop since. I love it. I love being around people that are passionate about making great quality software available to anyone.
Awesome, that's really great. So, as you viewers would have heard there, that both of these people, both Pedro and Sahini, are Canonical people. But for this particular stream, we're taking Canonical hats off, because obviously Monica and I are also Canonical people, and we're putting on our community Ubuntu person hats to talk about things personally. So nothing said here necessarily. Like Sahini's is very well fitted. That's good. So everything here is we're talking about things from a community perspective as contributors. From that perspective. So before we get into Juju stuff, I'd like to just ask you guys a couple of questions about Ubuntu community-related things. You touched on a little bit here, but I wonder, where did you begin with Ubuntu? Can you tell us a little bit about what you've sort of been involved in Ubuntu community-wise so far? And Pedro, why don't you go first this time?
Yes, sure. So outside of Canonical, I think I've been involved in several projects, mainly FAO, which is a disk benchmarking tool, and
cool.
it was incorporated into my server on Ubuntu a couple of years ago. But I really like the project and the people that worked it. Well, I'm not such an expert in disk benchmarking, but the community is really welcoming, and the bugs for beginners are quite challenging and rewarding. So I like spending some time there. And at Canonical, I am trying to understand a bit of who is the Juju community and how we can provide better tools and gather some feedback from the community and work with them to work on to make Juju a truly and genuine community-driven project. And I'm working as some sort of community manager or advocate for Juju at the moment.
Interesting. So something we've asked a bunch of other guests recently that I think you'll have a good answer for is, what was your first Ubuntu distribution? What was the first version or release that you used?
That
Do you remember?
in 2006. Now I can't remember if it was 04 or 10, or if it was that weird year that was 08 or something like that. But it was 2006 or 2006. Anyways, but I remember that I didn't have, my internet was not good. It would take like weeks for me to download the ISO. So I just used one of those programs that Canonical had for sending the CDs.
Yes, the Ship It program.
The Ship It program. And I love that so much because it's recognizing that not everyone has access to like quick, fast internet. Well, by the time, like 15 years ago, not everyone would have like broadbands or even good broadband. So recognizing that and sending that and growing the community through mail, that's something quite amazing, and that was the first distribution I used. I still keep the CD as a memory of better times, of times.
I'm kind of sad you didn't bring it, because there's inevitably the point in any of these where people start playing who has the oldest Linux stuff, and people are pulling out like their floppy disks and things like that. So that is very cool, and it's great, and it's such a common theme of how many people got into it because they couldn't afford because Windows was expensive, and you had the means where the disc you could go onto the website and just order it, or go to a loco and they would have them there, or you would get them in like the Linux magazine and things like that. So it's interesting now, because where especially for those of us who have good internet, and we don't we might not think about downloading the ISOs, but unfortunately even 15 years later, that's still not true for everybody. And so I think that there's still an important place for those having easy access to it.
And one thing curious about ordering the CDs from Brazil is that the customs is quite complicated. It's very hard to import things from mail. So you had these forums when people would be like, "Oh, I got a CD! I got a CD! I finally got like 100 of the people get the CD before the next release." So this person group making copies, because of course the CD would allow copies, and then one person would buy this bulk pile of CDs, and the other one would. So it was a cool times, fun times.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Very cool. What about you, Sahini? Where did you begin with Ubuntu, or tell us a bit more about your contribution with the WSL community stuff?
Oh man, my story is not as cool, but I will say, so I learned about Linux in general in college, which kind of upsets me because it feels like I had a really, I don't know, maybe I wasn't adventurous enough as a kid, but the Linux labs were like really dark and scary in college. They were like really smelly, and I just, I avoided it at first, but then I started doing this like robotics challenge. Yes, Reese, my first project was actually with robotics.
So I like to hear.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like cheating, right? Because it's like it's a contest for having your robot go through this maze. And I remember just learning from the community and grabbing things from the community, and it was kind of funny. I think my version was a saucy salamander. I think that was the first one. I think
That's
so,
very
because
cool.
I remember the name. But yeah, it was a good time, and haven't turned back since. From WSL. WSL started in technically 2015, 2016, but didn't really get into it until a couple years later. So it was 2018 when I first was like, this is cool. I don't have to go to the weird lab to do what I want to do. And that was pretty exciting.
Super. Saucy I had completely forgotten that one. That's such a good code name. I think that was 1310. That's nice. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
That is a really awesome story. And I think that it's one of those things about community learning. And for, so many times we talk, it's kind of like we have this divide between either university taught or self-taught. But I think there's this middle ground between community taught, where it's like learning as this collaborative thing. And it's honestly, I think that's the most fun. And especially now where these kind of streams are so easy to do. And we just see people kind of like people doing like Debian packaging and, which is maybe not the, but I'm sure 5 years, like me from 5 years ago, it's like you're watching a stream on what now? So, but it's just like you watch it and you see, especially you like people talking through it, and you see it's like, okay, this is how they do it, and it demystifies stuff, but it also kind of like inspires you to be like, I could maybe try this. And it's just it's I think one of the coolest things that our community and others like it do.
And one thing that you said that is very interesting is when the two universes merge. So when the university and the community learning, they kind of merge, because the university allows you to have this physical interaction, this presence, this face-to-face, and the community sometimes we lack that because of distances and so on. So many times we had such cool events at the universities that at the uni that were organized primarily online, and then they transcended the online world to that was cool.
Also, let's be honest, those events were great ways to get free food.
Oh yeah.
Free fruit and free t-shirts. That's what you're there for.
And stickers, possibly.
And stickers.
Nothing's changed. I think those are still my highest priorities.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you say all of that, though, because it's one of those things that, because of the lack of, well, not necessarily lack of, but because of the decline of sort of locos and local community groups and meetups and stuff, it's been a real shame, because that's where a lot of people sort of found their start and got going with things.
Yeah. Yeah, what's been interesting is that some, like, even though they've declined in some places, in other places they're still, like, obviously, like the Ubuntu Latin America community, super vibrant. Portugal, Korea, and so places where they've stayed active, or that have that they became active as maybe some of like the American and European and other European ones kind of started to go down as like things changed. It's been interesting to see like some, these people who are still keeping that local get-together spirit going. And so I know that actually the Loco research group is, I think they're just over halfway through their process about finding ways to how in 2021 do we kind of learn from the ones that are active and maybe kind of start to revitalize this part of our community, which, because once we can like be doing things in public, oh my gosh, I want to get together with people and nerd out about this stuff and get new people into our community. So, yeah.
Totally. Speaking of new people in communities, it's not a very good segue, but we'll talk about Juju now. So, if you came here looking at the title, it's because we want to talk about Juju. We have two here, two Juju involved people. So to the crowd, to the both of you, and first of all, for people who don't listen, because I don't think people, please correct me if I'm wrong, that our usual listeners are terribly diehard Juju fans. Please tell us what is Juju? One is. Eric's there. We know Eric.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, maybe I can start with Juju as a whole, so and then we can talk about the charm collection.
Let's do it.
So Juju is a charm operator lifecycle manager. I think that explains everything. It's really clear.
Yeah, that's it. Fair enough. See you guys.
Okay, cut it all down. It's all good.
No, I promise it's really simple. So if you break it down, what it means, a charm is just a word to specify that is one kind of operator. An operator is an operator, is something that operates something, and lifecycle manager is just, we're gonna care about the whole life cycle of something. So what we are actually doing is automating the lifecycle management of a piece of software. And why is that important? Why do you even need to care about the life cycle? Isn't it just a matter of like double clicking the thing, installing the snap, and you have the software? Well, it is for your local system usually, but when you're talking about cloud infrastructure and distributed systems and hybrid clouds and multi-clouds and all the sort of things, it gets a bit more complicated, because you need to care about how scalable your system is, how secure your system is, how much it complies with standards. So when you start adding this kind of complexity, each stage of the life cycle of your application gets a bit more complex than just double-clicking and installing thing. So when you first choose your application, it's already a challenge, because you need to know that this application will be compatible with my underlying infrastructure, and it will be compatible with other applications, and it will deliver what the customer wants. And then when I actually install my application, I need to care that the application will react well to the environment and to the usage and so on. When I start integrating my applications, when I want my database to talk with my front end, that's also complicated. So you see that I could spend like hours and hours talking about challenges that DevOps face on a daily basis. So
Sounds like an idea for more content.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that are the highlights of Juju, right? So Juju is trying to make a very stress less, take a little bit of your energy from stressing so much about complying to the best standards to focusing on what kind of applications or what you want to deliver at higher level, right? So it's a set of tools, pretty much. Juju is a set of tools to care about the life cycle of your applications. And it is, and that's what's so interesting for DevOps, right? But there is the whole community side of Juju that I think would be more interesting for this forum, and that's what Sohin is a specialist on.
Oh, specialist. Oh, don't give me that. Oh man, that's going on my resume. Pedro said it.
We do archive these videos, so just saying, we could give you a timestamp, and you can just put that. Yeah.
I'll give you a frame of my face with
as said by Pedro. Oh my gosh, excellent. We'll put a little brand store certified. That's excellent. Well, so the charm collection. Should I go into? You spoke a bit about what a charm is, but so I've been watching a lot of Rick and Morty. I don't know if you guys are, if you're rewatching a little bit of it,
Cool.
but I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of mind blowers. But the way I think about charms is, during this pandemic period, people are getting really. Every now and then an engineer will go on a rabbit hole and understand everything there is to know about maybe an endpoint relation of how an application should speak to another application, or how every time you back up a certain application, you need to make sure you do all these different things. And if all of those different little tidbits of information that all these different engineers are learning throughout their time in lockdown and in a basement with no windows for a year and a half, if all that was essentially like extracted out like Rick and Morty style and put into one big thing, that would be a charm, right? So all the instructions, all the things you need to know, the little itty bitty weird goodness that you need to know about all of the, how to handle chaos, how to handle all these different environments. If all that information was distilled into code about how to deploy an application, configuring it, managing the full life cycle, how it should relate, how it should speak to a different application, that would essentially be a charm. And through the charm collection, we've got all these different charms that some people at Canonical have built based on their best practices after deploying, managing the lifecycle of these applications for our clients for many, many years. All of that distilled knowledge goes into that charm. And then also with our community. So people like Eric, so all the things that he's learned over the many, many years of deploying and working in complex environments, all the things that he's learned gets put into a charm. And so that knowledge is then something that can be shared and distributed. And that is a beautiful, elegant, wonderful solution that that takes the complexity, the stress, the anxiety, the insanity out of the nuances of deploying, managing things, and hopefully with a vision of automating it into the future and having a collection of all these applications. You then begin to think about, okay, how should they work together? Every time I want to deploy a full stack of logging, monitoring, and alerting, I use these 4 charms together, and then I get all of those different services together, and I know it's just going to work. So that's the vision of a charm collection, how they all work together. Hopefully that made sense, and everyone thinks about Rick and Morty the way that I do.
I think that makes sense. So you've got the charms, these distilled best practice information about managing applications. You've got the Charm Hub where all of that lives. The Juju that sort of goes in between these things. And the vision you said is automating all of these tasks and whatever. But is there what else is there? Why? So we've got what is Juju, but why Juju? What's the why here?
If I may say, I think there are pretty much 2 good answers for that. So the boring one,
okay.
Don't let my boss hear that. The boring one is that it's very good it's excellent for DevOps. So if you need to comply to a set of standards, if you do not want to spend too much time with integration of applications, if you do not know how to do things, you can just do 4 or 5 commands and you're going to have a full stack of Kubernetes, a cluster of Kubernetes running as good as you'd have if you had hired a consultancy firm or something. So that's one of the answers, right? And there are lots of, don't get me wrong, there's lots of advantages in that sense. But the thing that I really like is that anyone can deploy an application and use an application on the cloud native space. So if you think about someone that had an idea of an algorithm, and this person, I don't know, is a specialist in agronomy, and they had an idea of how to measure nitrogen in the crops. They're not necessarily DevOps specialists, but they have this amazing idea that runs locally on their computer, but doesn't scale. So the value of the thing at a global level, it's unfortunately decreased because the person who have to run everything on their own system doesn't scale. It's not reliable.
So why wouldn't something like that scale? What's the current issue there?
It's just running locally, right? That's the difference between running locally just for yourself and actually building a service for others.
Right.
And the magic of Juju for me is that these people who had great ideas of that can make a real difference, they do not need to be DevOps specialists. They do not need to spend years and years and years researching to know how to deploy their applications, because honestly, that's the boring part. That's the cool part is right here where you're using your application and you're making difference, and that's impactful bit. The whole everything else under your application is just infrastructure, and what Juju is allowing is anyone with knowledge on how to do something amazing to offer that amazing thing at a global level. So if you spend, I don't want to give numbers here, but if you spend, a week or 2 researching a bit on your cloud, your cloud of preference plus Juju, you probably can deploy, a Python application at a global scale, and that will actually do something amazing, and we're changing. It's allowing this person to now offer this to many more people, and that's what I like so much about Juju. It's making it available to everyone out there. That's the magic of it, I'd say.
That's the magic of it. Cool. Sahini, do you have anything? Why Juju?
How do you top that? I mean, when it comes to charms, I don't know where I got this idea, but I think it was one of those late nights just playing around, thinking about it, listening to music, and then like, of course, Backstreet Boys came on, and it was I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you did, as long as you love me, right? That's how I think a charm is. Like, I don't care if you're on whatever cloud you're on Kubernetes, you're not on Kubernetes, if you're on this insane old hybrid cloud structure that your institution has kind of put together, ad hoc, or if you're perfectly designed, as long as you love the application, as long as you've put the time in, and enough community members have gotten together and shared their insights and information into that charm, the charm's going to be a beautiful, wonderful thing, and it'll love you forever. And I think that's that's my opinion about wine charms, that it's really agnostic for whatever background you are, and I think also for like whatever tools that you use. Like, people talk about what's the difference between Ansible and Terraform and Puppet and Chef and all that stuff, and I'm like, well, bring them. Like, if you've spent years of your life putting configuration management into Puppet, Chef, Ansible, bring that insights and information, and transform it into something that's central and can help teams who one worked with Puppet, one worked with Chef. It's a mechanism for those to still communicate. And I think that's my why charms on top of the why Juju. So
Yeah, and that's so important, because things are, I know for somebody who might be kind of new to all of this, that there's so many potential ways that they could go. And I think it's a bit of decision paralysis there, but having something that can kind of bring those choices together. And even though I both kind of love and hate you right now for getting a Backstreet Boys song stuck in my head, I think that was a really beautiful kind of explanation of not only how charms work, but why they're really awesome. And I think that one thing that one of our viewers pointed out is that this is all new to me, all completely new. And I totally agree with Vince that for somebody who is a total newbie to all of this, you both are so good at explaining not only what it is, but why it's important. And I think that's something that sometimes gets lost. It's like, here's what this does, and it's like, and it updates this, and it's the fastest this, and it's like, but why? Why does that matter?
And one thing that I love about charms, and just recapping, the charm is then this wrap that we put around any application out there to make Juju talk to the application properly. So the one thing that I love about charms is that, don't tell my boss again, but 90% of my time when I'm coding, I am on Stack Overflow or Googling questions, and copying and pasting is something that I do very intensively for prototyping, at least. And the thing here is that using a charm, or where we want to get with charm and the charming community, is as if a charm incorporated the top 10 answers on Stack Overflow for solving problems for an application. So imagine that you didn't have to research 10 posts for each problem that you had until you solve that. Imagine that the application came with the best practice as well. Or imagine what you need to do when you're deploying a cloud application. Maybe some of the listeners never had to do that, but imagine doing something very complicated that you had to research on Google how to do. Now imagine that when you downloaded the application on whatever format, it came with instructions on how to debug it throughout the whole life cycle. And that's what I find is so amazing. And what we're trying to achieve here in terms of community is that we do not have one person that is a specialist to answer all these questions in Stack Overflow. We do not have one. Well, maybe you have like some applications that have just one person, but maybe even that is not the most reliable thing ever. We want eyes on. We want hundreds of eyes in one application. We want a whole community always making sure that our answers are of the best quality and optimal for that application. And that's where we want to get. We want not one person per charm. We want dozens of people working on charm and making sure that this charm works well. So when I go there and I use the charm, I'm actually using the know-how of all these dozens of people, and that's a very cool vision, but also a challenge, right? Because getting lots of people to work on.
It's a very sort of Ubuntu story. It's a similar kind of story that Ubuntu followed, and Snapcraft and all this kind of thing. Just quickly, in the chat there, I saw a question about where you can find quick start videos and promo video tutorials and stuff for Juju, and that will be in the description for people who aren't watching live, and we'll talk about that in a second. But before we talk about how people can get into Juju, since we brought up that sort of parallel to Ubuntu, that's it being a very sort of similar Ubuntu thing. I know you were both relatively recent to the Juju story, but I wonder if you could tell a little bit of the story from the beginning of Juju, when it was sort of started, and to where it is now. If you know that story, I don't know.
Sweetie's eyes just got really big.
They got big because I think our CEO and our CTO dreamt it up like a decade ago. So this concept, the philosophies that create, Juju, that drive Juju, there are things that were dreamt up a really long time ago that are still more, I mean, quite frankly, now more prevalent than ever, or more important than ever. So I think, Pedro, you wrote the history of Juju. So
yeah, I can give some. So I was started in 2009. So, but the thing is that Juju is a very dynamic project, and the beauty of it is that it will always be dynamic. You cannot put a pin and say that's what Juju will support. Those are the clouds that Juju will support forever. It always a cumulative thing. So it started in 2009 as an idea to deploy applications in a consistent way, but you didn't have Kubernetes by then, and you barely had the beginnings of this universe of clouds, public clouds that we have. And as the time passed and these new technologies appeared, Juju started incorporating these things. And I think that Juju started, and in these 10 years, grew up to be this awesome project that incorporates so many APIs underneath it and can talk to so many clouds. But it's the same thing. It's just one core thing that talks to your substrate, to your underlying infrastructure, and allows you to deploy applications on top. So although in these 10 years, there were a lot of architecture changes and the way that you charm applications change, the core Juju change, the idea behind it is the same. It's kept the same. And Reese, you're talking about Ubuntu, and there's a very cool parallel to do between Juju and Ubuntu. So if you think about someone that is getting into the Linux universe, I don't know, 15 years ago, that was a very gray universe, a very boring universe from a perspective of someone who wasn't, someone that just wanted to use it out of the box. Maybe some developers, don't want to offend any developers out there that love this gray road, but from my perspective of a teenager that just wanted to play videos and Arduino from time to time, it was really complicated and hard to install a driver and make it work with a network card, for example. And Ubuntu brought it out of the box. You just install the CD, and it would ask you, hey, do you install the drivers? Do you install the MP3 players? And you get the system working out of the box. And I think that Juju is kind of like the cloud equivalent to that, if you think community-wise or enabling and empowering the community-wise. Because until, well, it's not perfect, but the idea is that anyone would just take the system, would take Juju, this tool, and build a system that will work out of the box. That will have the whole stack working for you. You do not need to deal about the this driver, this firewall rule, this integration between these two applications is too complicated. No, we can just focus on the top application layer. And again, that's very powerful if you stop to think about it, because imagine how many people gave up. And again, I'm talking about the average people that were around me. I'm not talking about everyone. But imagine how many people gave up Linux because it was too complicated. Now imagine how many people are giving up cloud native applications because it's too intimidating at the beginning. So that's I think from my point of view, Canonical hat off. That's what Juju is trying to do.
That's
You already
really
took the hat off.
awesome.
The hat was off at the beginning of the stream. Sorry.
Okay, I'm trying to keep track of my invisible hats, and for Sahidi and I, way too early to be doing that. But I just love that philosophy that not only it's so egalitarian, but it's so equitable. You know, taking people who have great ideas, and for Juju, like great ideas that if they could be introduced and supported at scale, could really change things. But instead of getting lost in, we've all been there when we've been working on something, and 4 hours later, we're still in the weeds trying to get that to work. And how kind of life-changing that is to have something where that hurdle is just kind of brought down, or it's brought up from like here to something that is easier for people to overcome. And I think that's great because there is, I think, in some aspects of the broader Linux community, kind of it was super hard for me, so it should be super hard for everybody. And it's like, well, then we complain about like our market share, and it's like because if people feel that it's hard and challenging and they can't get help. And I love that our community ethos from the very start has been like, well, let's flip that on its head and make this accessible to everybody. And so, Pedro, when you talk about Juju having that same philosophical core, I think that certainly for most people watching this, that we kind of feel that, because that's, I think, what drew us all to Ubuntu in the first place, no matter where we came in on.
That's true. And there's a whole aspect of diversity as well, because not everyone is a specialist in everything, and the power that the community has to complement each other's strengths is amazing. And on Juju, you see that very, very, very strongly. And as Eric is saying on the chat, Juju, you code on Juju, right? So code is a very practical it's a material thing that is going on. It's not I know about this concept, and I'm trained on this. No, you keep adding code together, keep adding the pie of code together, and suddenly you have something much more complete that anyone can go and use. So it's consolidated in one place. That's what I mean. It's not only people's heads.
Interesting. That's super interesting. Eric had another interesting point in the chat there when he was saying, listening to what you guys were talking about, saying that Juju is can be almost like Juju is a cloud distribution, given the way that you explained it. Does that sort of ring true?
It was not necessarily my intention, but
sure.
Maybe, yeah. I was making a comparison between how easy it is to use Juju out of the box compared to how easy it was to use Ubuntu, and still is. I was to use Ubuntu out of the box. But if you think about it, it can be. That's the thing, because Juju can be a cloud distribution if you want to. If you want to use that way, I'm sure that you can find and somewhere there in documentation, you can find the right commands to make it work as a cloud distribution in 5 minutes for you if you want to.
Totally. Okay, cool. So we've got some time. We've still got lots of time, and we'll get to the community-centric stuff first. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, the sort of Juju-wise, Juju specifically as a technology, is where it's going. What's coming next? What's the thing? And obviously, Juju, as you guys have described, has existed for a long, long time, and it's been bringing in and adapting with the times of bringing in different technologies. But what's the next thing?
can talk about the core and
Juju
talk about
and
the
charms.
charmers maybe. So core wise, I think we want to expand and the underlying infrastructure, how well we support the underlying infrastructure, and we gave we had a spike for developing for improving the way that we interacted with Kate in the beginning of the year, and now we want to bring all this knowledge to the machine world as well, and to kind of level up and increase the standard of how well we interacted with this cloud. And I think that's a challenge for the next sprint, so to say, for the core.
I would say kind of follow where the wind takes us when we've got the beauty of the community. I mean, I'm a product manager. I'm always going to say, well, we'll do what the market wants, right? We'll be super agile, and we'll always shift as the market shifts. But so ultimately, I think the goal for us is, how do we build the community, right? How do we get all of those geniuses who know the weird amounts of stuff, all those mind blower moments? How do we get all of those into charms and build the community out and get people passionate about each one of those? I think that's like the next big realm. And then when we've built that community, we hope that everything else will just follow, because we'll get more feedback. We'll understand how they're using it. We'll know how to make it faster, better, smarter, right? So I don't know, but
well, I think you've got one super excited community member in chat already. So
we hope he's been doing all the charms already, but honestly, for the rest of the group to take a bit of what Eric's learned and be able to apply that in their own institution, I mean, that's the greatest gift that you'll ever get. I mean, like, time and sanity, that's the gift that Eric's giving you. So not a bad gift.
Time and sanity. I like that. So if this is the goal, what's the plan? How can people get involved? How can people learn more? What's next steps for anyone who's interested in the chat?
Yeah, so please go to juju.is/docs, and I promise you they're not boring docs. You're going to be a bit entertained. There's some Easter eggs and some jokes there if you want to find them. So Juju has two parts pretty much. If you want just to use the applications, or if you want to charm your application. So juju.is/docs/OLM, Operator Lifecycle Manager, will teach you how to use Juju out of the box, and has a very 5-minute tutorial on how to deploy your K8s cluster or your Lexi on your local host. And then you can deploy and integrate your first applications. And then, because I've been talking here for 45 minutes about how easy it is to do things, but if you do not try, you're not going to believe yourself. You're not try yourself, you're not going to believe it. And it's really 5-6 commands that you run. So juju.is/docs/OLM if you want to use the applications. And if you're an app developer, an upstream app developer, and you want to learn how to charm your applications to use Juju, it's juju.is/docs/SDK, and has a very good tutorial there. And also the community forums are very active in terms of the team is always watching and trying to answer questions there, and there are no stupid questions. Honestly, we are welcoming anyone at any stage. If you don't even know what cloud native is, if you just want to learn a bit more about how to deploy your applications, I think it's important to state it here. You're more than welcome to interact with us there.
100%. I also see a comment that some of the charms were a little bit out of date. That sucks, but if we bring more community members in, hopefully they'll naturally update. I think we've done a lot to kind of involve more people, more communities, to help update a lot of the charms. But I know that we can't hit everything. I think we're prioritizing some of the big hitters, the most popular ones first, the things that have been used and deployed first. But if they're ones that you're looking for, definitely reach out to us in the community, because we might already be working on it, working on updating it, and haven't just pushed it out yet and could use some help. Or we might be willing to partner with some people to help do that together. And we've been fast and furious on this over the past couple of months. It's kind of been a little bit crazy. So yes, we've been doing a lot. I'm sorry, some of them were a little bit old, but this thing has been around for, like, this concept of charms and operators has been around for, you know, more than a decade. So excuse our appearance as we update everything.
And just one last thing that I completely forgot. The Juju team at Canonical is running some charming sessions. So we're doing, so everyone that works on the charm at Canonical can have the opportunity to present that to the team and to show what were the challenges, how could we improve. We're just trying to gather some feedback and to understand a bit more what's the process of developing a charm. That's open, so you can interact with all the CTO, the CEO, all the engineering managers involved in Juju. I'm gonna post the link somewhere in the comments, or I'm gonna send it to Reese and he'll post it. Please join us again. No one's gonna embarrass you asking questions that you might not know the answer for. We're there to serve you as a community member.
No hazing, so it's good.
No hazing.
I think that definitely would violate the code of conduct. Just saying.
Yeah. So for anyone, do you have that link now, Pedro, that I could put in the chat? But for anyone watching not live, I'll put the link in the description when we're finished with the video, so you can go ahead and click that.
And I'll add to Pedro what you said. One of the coolest things about joining this community, even if you started knowing absolutely nothing, way to get great mentorship and an awesome community just right off the bat. I mean, that's one of the things you love the most about open source is, you know, all of a sudden you've got mentors, people who are helping you just out of the goodness of their hearts, who just know genius things. The only thing is you got to give back, right? So every now and then when you know the answer, you know, then you can start sharing the love. And I think it's one of the most poetic things out there, especially in times of pandemic and COVID, and having a global network of mentors is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the people that I've met online over the past year, that without them, it would have been such a different experience, because we were pretty much stuck in our 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment for almost a year. But it helped us feel not only connected, but like we were doing important and interesting things. And I think that feeling of wanting to, once you've been mentored, to pay that forward in mentoring others, in however, and mentoring can be, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It can be very small, everyday acts of mentorship too. So, and I think that sometimes gets lost, but yeah, it's just, I agree with you completely.
It's a special plug for women and minorities in tech. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what a better way to get involved. Yeah.
I do want to draw attention, especially for people on Twitch who can't see this. But Pedro, it looks like you have an invite from our awesome friends at the podcast Ubuntu Portugal to join their monthly meetup. And I'm
before Pedro says anything, he's going to do it. It's going to be great. I'm volunteering him for him. It's going to be great. Sorry, Pedro.
It would be my pleasure. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yay! Awesome. And that's another awesome thing about, especially, you know, speaking. Okay, I'm going to put my Canonical hat back on, but it's only because it's the community representative hat, who is also the facilitator, and who basically, it's like, brings awesome people together who are doing great things and helps make that happen. And so I love in these streams when we get different parts of our community saying, let's do this together, and it just makes me so happy. So yeah.
Facilitator and enable. Yeah, absolutely.
I am professional enabler Yannick. Thank you very much.
Cool. So, well, actually, that's more or less all the questions I have for you guys. Is there anything you'd like to ask Monica, or anything you both would just like to say?
No, I'd say
It's early, I understand.
man, Reese just put us on the spot, and we're getting like 4 hours sleep. So, it's just saying, what are kind of maybe like if you have a personal like community goal or something you'd love to see happen in the Juju and or Charms community, maybe what would that be?
I would like to see two things that come into my mind. I'd like to see more cases of people who are DevOps illiterates, didn't know anything about DevOps, deploying their applications. So people who use Juju as a way to catapult their applications in a quick and reliable way. And the second thing, I'd like to see charms being developed by multiple people. So multiple people engaging in one charm. I know these are very specific things, but they're very powerful within the Juju universe, and they mean a lot for the project as a whole. Two milestones that I have in my head at a personal level.
Awesome.
For me, if you go to charmhub.io, which is basically the collection of all the little charms and all of the applications that we help manage, you'll see on the left-hand side is a list of categories. I want to see the number of categories just like explode, and the feedback that I would get as a product manager to just be like, the high-level categories aren't enough. I need more detailed, granular ways to be able to find the charm that I need. If I ever got that piece of feedback, oh my gosh, I would be so happy. Like chef's kiss, that would be the most beautiful thing that I could imagine. Where because of the use cases of these charms, the amount of things that they can do, the power that it can, and the way that it can elevate different communities. If you're retail, finance, telco, MLOps, like all the stuff, like no matter what you're doing, it could help you. And I think when I see those categories exploding, I think that's when I'll know that we've reached the breadth of the community it deserves.
Yeah. Well, I think clearly what we need to do is maybe in 6 months have you all back on, see how that's going. And definitely, I think I don't want to speak for Reese, but I'm totally going to speak for Reese that whatever you all want to do with either on airs or, either office hours or other on air, because I think our goal is to have a whole bunch of people doing content for Ubuntu on air. And so having more like Juju and charming content. Yeah. That's by you and by people like Eric and by this growing community. That'd be awesome.
Would be 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm reading the chat here, and there are people interested, and Eric, of course, everyone knows that, but he'd love to help with getting started with charming. And I mean, that could be as well as. Oh, also, Pedro, I volunteered you to do a workshop for Ubuntu Portugal, just letting you know. But they also doing that kind of workshop would be an awesome thing to do on Ubuntu on air, and we could have, if Eric would be up for it, we could have you both on, and you could do it live here, or not live, depending on how you want to go.
That would be really cool. Yeah, I think it's one of the things that we're trying to show, exactly how easy it is for anyone to get started.
You can demo it on me, Pedro.
It would be that would be too guaranteed of a success. And please join us at the community. We are looking for people willing to lead. We have this amazing piece of tool, in my opinion, and project, and we're looking for community leaders, and it's a great opportunity to engage.
Yeah.
At this stage.
Yeah. And also, we've just had another, speaking of comment, I want to show this. I think that this would be a great thing talking about with Ubuntu members and people in the Ubuntu community, including Juju and Charms, and anything else, like talking about how do you all use this in real life? What are your use cases? That would be fantastic. So, yes, email, let's see, for Reese, you can put my, oh wait, do I want to, anyway, dang it, this is way too early to be thinking about this, and I really need to go and get a coffee. But yes, but let's find, oh, we have a discourse post for this talk, so post that and we will chat there and get more people involved in that conversation. And yes, that would be brilliant.
So we have a discourse post on Ubuntu, on the Ubuntu discourse, but we also have this one on the Juju discourse. So everyone with your who's had questions, or anyone who wants to get involved and well, acquire Pedro by the sounds of it, just put it in there and he'll see it and it'll be great.
We might need to get Pedro an agent, just saying.
No, I'm his agent now. So good. We've got this.
Pedro, you might want to talk about what percentage Reese is getting.
I'm gonna have to debate that with my wife.
All right. So we're running out of time now anyway. So so the chat here will be recorded. So I'll pick through it, make sure I get all the links. But if I've missed anything, leave a comment somewhere and I'll put it in. Thank you both for joining us. It's been a real pleasure.
So much. So happy to have you both. And just from the minute I got to talk to you both kind of individually, it's like I just knew that this was going to be exciting and full of energy. And look at how many things it sparked just in this hour of conversation between us and our audience. And that's just, yay, that's exactly it. That's couldn't ask for anything better. So thank you both so much.
No, thank you for organizing this.
Yeah, thank you for letting us speak.
Of course. Anytime.
I mean, I'm sure you'll be back. We're talking about Juju and Charm Hub again. And so, Henny, I'm going to badger you some more. Well, I'm going to badger you at all about some WSL stuff at some point as well. So it's going to be, we'll have you back on, I'm sure, soon enough.
It'll be my pleasure.
All right. With that, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone watching.
Thank
Not
you,
live,
everyone.
And goodbye.